So finally today we have the Indexicals argument against the Trinity. As I've been saying for you guys that do follow me, I've written an entire paper on this. It's not too long. It should be about like 8-9 pages, but it's going to go far more into depth than I'm going to explain in this video. And the paper primarily focuses on not just Proust's response, but my addition to deflating the intuition that most people have about why it's a problem in the first place. So make sure you click on the link below in the video description. It's linked to my Patreon. It's completely free, my papers. Make sure you become a member and grab that paper. So now let's get into the argument. So what is the argument? It's classically ran as follows. The Father and the Son have the same divine mind. If the Father and the Son have the same divine mind, then the Father and the Son share the same beliefs. The Father has the de se belief, I am the Father. If the Son were to have the de se belief, I am the Father, it would be false. The divine mind contains no false beliefs. Therefore, the Son does not believe I am the Father, and you get a contradiction, because you get a divine mind that's shared amongst two persons, but they don't share all beliefs. Now, before we get into why this argument doesn't follow or how to solve it, I want to address a very popular rebuttal that we give in these communities that I think is an equivocation. It confuses the matter. And that is to say that this argument doesn't work because we just deny propositional knowledge. Just flat out, people just say, well, I deny propositional knowledge, so it doesn't work. Well, there's propositional knowledge in two senses, right? When we're denying propositional knowledge as, Christians, Thomists, whatever, the majority of classical theists, we're not denying, the form of proposition. We're not denying a sort of deflated sense, a semantic sense of what a proposition is. For example, we can only express truths in statements that are truth apt, right? Propositions are those kind of things that are truth apt. So if we say God knows juju exists, obviously that's true, and obviously that's in the form of a proposition, but that doesn't mean like metaphysically God has propositional knowledge. So there's a deflated sense of propositional knowledge, and there's the metaphysical sense, which is to say something like God has discrete representational states in his mind or as aspects of his mind. That's what we disagree with. Now, just saying that doesn't get rid of the issue, and this is what I want to clarify. Saying God does not have propositional knowledge in the metaphysical sense does not get rid of the issue, right? Because if you agree with the premise that same mind means they share all the same beliefs, then it doesn't matter really what account you're going to give about, God knows through knowing himself, or God has discrete representational states. That's not addressing why you're limiting so propositions count as omniscient, like bearing or sharing amongst the omniscience category. So I would not give that answer, because what usually is happening there is that the Christian is equivocating on the two, because they're saying, well, that's in the form of a proposition. We just deny propositional knowledge at all. So, problem gone, right? Because I am the Father as a proposition, we deny propositional knowledge. Well, that's not what we mean, in classical theism when we say we deny propositional knowledge. Just to get that out of the way. A lot of you don't mean it like that, but a lot of you do go around saying something like that, which is why I wanted to get that off the table first. Now, any account that is going to solve this problem, as far as I'm concerned, is going to restrict where you get same mind, same beliefs. It's going to restrict the types of propositions that count as beliefs. And in this case, we're restricting de se propositions, which is to say those types of propositions that use an indexical. Now, that may seem, and this is what my paper focuses on, that may seem ad hoc. Like, okay, there's an issue with indexicals and you're just removing indexicals from what counts as, a part of the omniscient category. And one of the major points that I make in my paper is that every standard account of theism already does this. take a Muslim who's running this argument, and they say, does the Father know He's the Father? You say yes. Does the Son know He's the Son? You say yes. Well, does the Father know He's the Son? Of course not. Well, then, we can ask the Muslim, do you know that you are yourself? Let's say the Muslim's name is Jeremy. Jeremy knows he's himself. Yes. Does God know all true propositions? He's in a struggle, right? Because if he says yes now, I know myself as Jeremy, or Jeremy knows myself, him saying that, I know myself, or I know that I am Jeremy, is not a true proposition said by God, right? It is not. Otherwise, he would be claiming to be God himself. So already in the scope of what's standardly considered theism, those types of propositions are already excluded. Now, going into Proust's account, without getting too deep into it, is something along the lines of an analogy to the metaphysics that we already accept in the Trinity, which is to say that there is one act with different relations that describe different aspects of that act. So, for example, in creation, right, there's one act of creation, but we can think of it as being filtered through the Father. There's a specific type of relation that the Father has that the Son does not have in relation to that one creative act. Likewise, when we have the de se statements, the Father knows He's the Father, the Son knows He's the Son, you can think of the one mind as that one act filtered through or instantiated by the aspect of paternity, or filtered by the aspect of the Son, or that who is begotten. And so we have the metaphysical structure already in place there, which is just to say that you have one act and you have sort of it being filtered through those aspects of relations. So in summary, the way that we directly stop the contradiction from occurring is, in whatever way the argument is being formalized to you, you would deny the premise that says same mind means shares all beliefs, because we would restrict what counts as a proper proposition in order to be considered in the category of divine omniscience. So if the argument will always take that structure, which is to say that if you have the same mind, you have same beliefs. We say that's fine if you exclude de se beliefs. Contradiction's gone. Now, the fact that any standard account of theism already excludes these types of propositions is already enough to sort of deflate it as an objection from any other religion. Now, another aspect to focus on is an atheist, right? Well, what if it's not someone who accepts that there is an omniscient being? And so my paper goes into explaining a non-theological example of omniscience in which the atheist would have to at least consider it as a plausible analogy, account of which excludes de se beliefs. Again, go into my paper to get that full explanation.